Key modern railways. In-depth railway news.
Hello and welcome to the December edition preview. And here we are again in the studio. Only allowed out for exercise, and obviously I don't do a lot of that. This month's edition is a London special, hence the tube train on the cover. The editor knows this doesn't do a lot for me, but at least there's a nice little shot of that superb blue Pullman liveried HST set. It isn't all tube trains though, there are plenty of other interesting articles, and here is the editor himself to tell you about them. Philip.
Thanks Ian. So, I'm suited and booted once again because I'm in Key Publishing's office doing some recording for our Golden Spanner Awards. Now last month you may recall I was doing the same thing for our Railway Industry Innovation Awards. And in the issue of Modern Railways that we're now promoting, we've got a special supplement called Rail Innovation, and that outlines the winners of the awards and also has some other feature articles, including an introduction by Roger Ford about the history of innovation in the rail industry. The Golden Spanners, they'll be coming up in the January issue, which is the next one, and then you'll be able to read Roger's review with all the results. In terms of, back to the December magazine, in terms of the main features, our principal focus this time is on London. Public transport in London has become a very political issue at the moment because of the COVID crisis and the need to provide additional funding support because obviously revenue has dropped massively on the tube and on buses and so on. So our lead feature is about the London Underground, and I've spoken to LU Managing Director Andy Lord, and we've had an interesting discussion focusing a little bit of the now in terms of what's going on with COVID, talking about the current projects that are being delivered on the tube. So there's a Northern Line extension to Battersea, the station upgrade at Bank, the Four Lines modernisation project to re-signal the subsurface lines, and new trains for the Piccadilly line, which are being built by Siemens. But beyond that, TfL has also now published a wish list of what it would like to do given certainty of funding, which includes more new trains and signalling projects and so on. So there's quite a lot to talk through, but it's all very interesting stuff. Mention of the new Piccadilly line trains, we also have a feature about the Siemens factory at Goole, which is now under construction, and looking at the prospects for that. And we have a feature about the Bakerloo line, which is an extract from a new book that's just about to be published, and that looks at potential extensions. The Bakerloo line extension is one of those projects, unfortunately, that slipped down the list a bit as the funding battles intensified. Moving out of London and across into Kent, my predecessor, James Abbott, he lives in Kent and generally is reported every year on the outcome of the Kent Rail Summit. This year that was held in the middle of October and it focused on Kent County Council's rail strategy, which they've just published. And it's quite a comprehensive document with lots of proposals for infrastructure projects, rolling stock and timetabling. So there's a very interesting feature article outlining all of those, and a few of the elements have been updated slightly since the original strategy was published. So that's well worth reading. And we also have a feature article which is an interview with Dave Penny, who's Network Rail's Central Route Director, principally responsible for the West Midlands area and also for the Chiltern line down to London. Now, the West Midlands has had its timetabling challenges, and there were some lessons that they're learning from that, which forms part of the article, but also some of the projects that they're looking to do going forward. So, plenty of interest there. Those are the main features. There's obviously much more beside that in the magazine, and Roger and Ian's items that you'll hear about separately. I hope you're able to get hold of the magazine. It's still available in the shops where they're open. Hopefully, they'll all be back open again soon. But you can order online direct from the Key Publishing shop, and of course you can subscribe to get it delivered direct to your door. So that's me done for this month. Thanks very much, and I'll hand back over to Ian.
Thank you, Philip. He's getting very professional looking, isn't he? Now, next up is Roger, who has got the latest on the train operators versus the Treasury story. And I suspect this will be coming up quite a bit in editions to come. Still, Roger's got all the detail, and here he is. Roger, tell us more.
Hello. There was a bit of excitement this month when writing Informed Sources, and normally I've got lots of time to do research, write things down, think about things, a bit of editing, but this month I'd sent all my column off to the magazine, and suddenly an Informed Source reported some really hot news. If you remember, last month I wrote about the Department for Transport and the change from the emergency recovery measures agreements to the longer term direct awards which will take over. As part of that, the Department for Transport is trying to get money out of the owning groups by requiring them to pay what they call transition payments. These assume that if the franchise went ahead and COVID hadn't happened, some franchises would have gone bust. In which case, the owning groups would have had to put money in to keep it going for as long as they could. And when the money ran out, they would have defaulted, and they'd have also lost their performance bonds and the assets in the industry. Now, that is money that the Treasury wants. It's money the taxpayer would have got if you believe the Department for Transport. And these are substantial numbers between the various owning groups. It's probably around about 500 million. Anyway, that's how we left it at the end of last month. What the informed source said was that the owning groups had got together and they had decided to challenge this. They were unhappy that they'd been bounced into these transition payments with about 14 days notice. They then had 14 days to reply. DfT had 14 days to take their thoughts into consideration and then give them the final bill, as it were. So they took legal advice. They think it's unfair, and as a result, what's happened is that it's all slipped back. So instead of it having to be settled by the 13th of December, it's now back to the end of January, when, if it goes ahead, they'll have 7 days to pay. This one's going to run and run, and you can read about it first in informed sources. The second item also concerns the changes to what I call the utility railway. What's happening here is that with ridership having plateaued, gone back to a steady about 30% of pre-COVID levels, the train operators are starting to cut back services. I call it utility railway. Do you need 3 trains an hour to Manchester and Birmingham when they're running empty? No, of course you don't. So during December, various train operators, most of them, are actually cutting the services back. What happens after that, we don't know how long it will last. At the Transport Committee hearing last week, the train operators reckoned that ridership in the medium term might recover to 75%. The Department for Transport thought that was a bit optimistic. Something else last month I wrote about was the time being taken to reopen the Dundee Aberdeen line after the Carmont derailment. And thanks to all of you who wrote in saying that, supporting my dispassionate analysis of what had become quite an emotional issue. I've been doing more research, and I've got a lot more information on what went on, where the time was taken, and also some exclusive stuff on the work of the Rail Accident Investigation Branch in investigating the incident. And then I have a bit of self-indulgence. My late great colleague Brian Perron, our gourmet greiser, was always very hot on claims and complaints about the BR sandwich. Brian pointed out that modern health requirements for food meant that at station buffets you had to have everything refrigerated, so the days of the iron hard pork pie under a plastic dome in a sort of brief encounter type station was long gone. And of course British Rail in the 80s was one of the pioneers, along with Boots and Marks and Spencers, of the pre-packaged sandwich. Anyway, my local MP, who happens to be the Transport Secretary, said in the House of Commons, when someone suggested that these direct awards might be a move back to British Rail, said, well, we're not going back to British Rail, bad sandwiches and all that. Well, so I point out the history of sandwiches on British Rail, and if you think that's perhaps a bit self-indulgent, my real point is that this is a indicator of the mindset of politicians, that they can associate the National Railway with bad sandwiches. And finally, of course, there's Tin Watch again, where someone else gets spanked. One train operator sent out a press release saying that the wonderful new trains are going to be more reliable than the old trains. Oh no, they're not at the moment. And for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing, I've been spending a lot of time with a cold towel around my head over a hot spreadsheet, working out the results of the annual reliability review, which backs up the golden spanners. That will be a big issue in our January issue, which is, of course, our rolling stock issue of Modern Railways. So that's all for this month. There's a genuine scoop at the front, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Roger. Look forward to reading that. So that just leaves my Pan Up column, which is, this month, it's the equivalent of a TV clip show. You know, the ones they put together because they can't go out and film new stuff. Well, I'm looking back at the superannuated anorak trips. Our last anorak outing was on the 10th of March, 9 months ago. If we leave it much longer, we're going to start believing press releases. Now, there's no chance of us old codgers setting foot on a train for a little while yet, so I thought I'd do a little review of these last 10 years, and remarkably, that's how long we've been doing it. I've put together the best bits, and I hope you enjoy a few memories. Don't blame me if you get nostalgic for only 10 years ago. It's easily done. We always find out something new when we go, either from watching what goes on around us, listening to memories, or even Googling the places we've been to. Sometimes we come up with what, at least to us, is a new idea. So I thought it would be interesting to take a look back and see what became of them. Probably the most significant was our trip around South Wales, where I spent half my career, Landor and Canton, a little bit Cathays, but mostly at Canton. Having our steak and chips overlooking Cardiff Bay and finishing off the red wine, I suggested the valley should be a light rail system. I was almost disappointed that there wasn't much in the way of argument, like there usually is, but bear in mind that the plan at that time was electrification with Class 315s taking over. The 315 plan stood for another 2 years, but I'm pleased to say, as you will know, the plan now is to make it a metro system. We'd worked out this will save 20 minutes over the length of the route, so will this happen now? Actually, probably not, because the trams will be running on battery power for about half the route. But one big advantage of tram operation is the very short station dwell times. Most systems manage about 20 seconds, the same as London Underground, and that's backed up by the sharp braking and good acceleration. So why can't heavy rail trains do that? Well, it's partly down to the guard operating the doors and selling tickets, so often it takes time to get to the door buttons, and then there is a procedure used to operate the doors. Even if the guard is there, the procedure is still, well, as we can see on this shot here from Long Eaton Station, open the local door first, check the platform is still there, open the other doors, then passengers can get on and off. You can see there's not many of them this time because it's during lockdown. And closing the doors reverses the process. Check the doors are clear, close them, check again to see nobody's trapped, then get on the train and close the local door. On a tram and on driver-only operated trains, the driver does all this, with the aid of cameras of course, but without the additional time taken for the local door operation. And then there's the time taken up by defensive driving, where drivers are trained to brake gently, well ahead of when they need to stop. This is because we can't be sure the rails are not slippery. Using step 3 of a 3-step brake has become unusual. Yet if rails were clear, that is to say not covered in leaves, we could brake harder and nearer the stop point, thus saving time. This has come up many times before, and there's no real interest in saving time except on intercity routes. Operators prefer to have more time up their sleeves to make sure they don't run late. So I was just writing that article when an email comes in from Network Rail saying how they were going to play their part in limiting global warming. Then I thought that if nobody's interested in saving running time, what if we use this spare time for more environmentally friendly driving? Well, some pretty big numbers on energy savings come out of that. Not that I think anyone will be bothered, but I'm bothered by Network Rail thinking that overgrown railways are green. They might be green in colour, but they waste energy. And in the magazine, I tried to work out how much. So, that's it for this preview of the December edition. And we'll all be beavering away on the one that comes out just before Christmas next. So, hope to be speaking to you just before then. Okay. All the best, everybody.
Visit www.keymodernrailways.com for more interesting and essential information about the British Railway Network.